Okay, so now we're moving on to 6.2, which is factoring trinomials. I'm sure you've seen this in the past before, so hopefully it will be a good refresher for your mind. So let's say we have a trinomial means there's three terms, right? So let's say we have the trinomial x squared plus 6x plus 8, okay? So we want to factor this trinomial, okay? If we try to do the one we did in the previous problems, try to see if we can find a common factor between them, you'll see that we won't, right? Because this has a coefficient 1 and then there's two even numbers, so can't do it, all right? And also on this one doesn't have an x as well, so can't do it, all right? So one of the things that we can do is we need to find factors of 8. Okay. So, um, so one thing I like to show students is kind of make a little cross here, or X, I should say. All right. So I'm going to label this C and then this is L. All right. And this is C and this is L. So C is the center number. I'm going to put that here. And 8 is the last number. That's what this is saying. Last. C stands for center. Okay. And I put 8 there. Okay. All right, so what I want to do is when I try to add two terms, it's going to give us 6. And then when I multiply the two terms, it should give me 8. Okay. So if we were to list the factors of 8, right, they would be what? 1, 8, what else? One times 8 is 8. What's another one? 2 and 4, right? So 2 and 4 will give me 8. Okay. Is there anything else? I don't think so. Okay. So now what you want to do is you want to pick the pair that's going to give you these conditions, right? So when you add them, it's going to give you 6. And when you multiply them, the answer is going to be 8. Okay. So the most obvious one is going to be 2 and 4, right? Because 2, 2 plus 4 is 6. Okay. And then when I multiply them, 2 times 4 will give me 8. Okay, and that's what I want. Okay, when I add them and then when I multiply. So in this case, then my factors are going to be x plus 2 and x plus 4. All right, so for the first one that we did, that one was nice because everything was positive, right? Now look at the second one. The second one here has a minus and positive. So in this case, then we need to factor in also the negatives, not just the positive, but also the negatives. Okay? Because again, if we try to put it in this cross method, that's what I call it, a cross method. Okay? Again, the center number and then the last. The center number is going to be negative 15, and the last number is going to give us 54. Okay? Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to find factors of 54. Okay. So again, when I add them, it's going to give me negative 15. When I multiply them, it's going to give me 54. So let's find those factors. Okay. So we have 1 and 54. That's 1. The other one's going to be 2 and 27. The other one's going to be 3 and 18. Okay. The other one's going to be 6 and 9. All right, and I think that's about it. Oh, no, there's another one. No, I got it. No, it's going the other way. All right, so I think that those are about it. Okay, but again, since we have a negative, we need to factor that in as well. So not only we have the positive, but also the negative. So plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 6, plus or minus 54, so on and so forth. Okay. All right. So what's two numbers? Okay. What's two numbers when I add them is going to give me minus 15, and then when I multiply them, it's going to give me 54. Okay. Well, hopefully you wrote down minus 6 and minus 9. Okay. Because minus 6 plus minus 9 is going to give me negative 15. And minus 6 times negative 9 is going to give me a positive 54. And that's what I want. I got a negative 15 and a positive 54. So that means then my factors are going to be z minus 6 and then z minus 9. Okay? And in fact, let me rewrite this here. Okay? Anytime you have this combination where the negative here in the middle is here and the positive is in the back. The negative's in the middle and the positive is in the back. Okay? That means both of your factors are going to be negative. These ones are going to be negative. So that's why we had z minus 6 and z minus 9. That only works when you have a negative and a positive. Okay? That means both of your factors are going to be negative. Okay? And that's all we have to do in that one. So here again, we have z squared plus 4z plus 5. We need to factor this. And again, if we do the cross method, right? 4 here and 5 here. So that means we need to find two factors. When we add them, will give us 4. And then when we multiply them, will give us 5. Well, the factors of 5, right? The factors of 5 are 1 and 5. We don't have to worry about the negatives because all of these are positive. So all we're worrying about is positive. Okay. So 1 plus 5 is 6, and 1 times 5 is 5. So it gives me the multiplication, but it doesn't give me the addition part. So in this case, then, if we don't have that, okay, what they say is this is called prime, right? Of course, there are other methods of trying to factor this, but we won't learn them until we get to 132 college algebra. Okay, so we can't just straight factor it like this, then it's called prime. Okay. All right. How about the next one? What's going to be first? We always want to find the greatest common factor between them. So what's going to be the greatest common factor between these three terms? 2. Good. Okay. So then I'll have x squared left over plus 4x minus 5, right? Again, I can double check. 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times 4x is 8x. And 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Okay, so that matches. So that means 2 is my greatest common factor. Now, can we factor this trinomial? Okay, so again, I'm going to do my little cross method. I want the 4 and then the negative 5. We're just focusing on this. Okay, so we need the factors of 5. Again, that's just going to be 1 and 5, right? But there's a positive and a negative, so that means I need to consider the positive and negative for each of those factors. Okay? All right? So which ones do we need to pick here? What are the two factors we need? Exactly, right? -1 and +5. Okay, so again, -1 plus 5 is going to give me 4, check. And then -1 times 5 is -5, check. Okay, so that's how we verify. So in this case, then when we bring this down, that's going to be x minus 1 and then x plus 5. And then don't forget the 2 in the front. So this would be in factored form. Okay, so what if we have something like this? 3p squared minus 2p minus 5. Okay, so again, first we want to see if we have a common factor between those three terms. Okay, as you notice here, we're not going to have that, right? 3, -2, -5, they don't have a common factor between them. Okay, so how do we factor this then? Well, I learned the method a long, long time ago. All right. Um, Now there is another method where you would, find the, factors of 3, then you need to find factors of plus or minus 5, you know, and try to um, manipulate the numbers, and eventually you can get the factors. I've discovered a different way to do it that gives you it goes straight to the answer, straight to the point. So I'm gonna show you a video of this, and then I'll talk about it. Okay, so this method is called the slide method. So what's our first step? What do we do first? In the video, what did they do? Yeah, we're gonna multiply, right? So we're gonna take that 3, all right, and then multiply by -5. So we're gonna have p squared minus 2p minus 15. Okay? All right, and then we find the factors. He does it kind of different, the opposite than for me, but that's okay. So I have on mine, -2, -15. He has it the other way. Okay? So we got -2, -15. Sorry. All right. And so we want to find two numbers. When we add them, will give us -2. When we multiply, give us -15. Okay. So in this case, we get -5 and 3. So -5 plus 3 is -2, and -5 times 3 is -15. Okay? And that's what we want, right? We got the -2, -15. So that means our factors so far are -5 and +3. Are we done? No, but this is where a lot of students mess up. They're like, oh, I'm done. I factored it, but you're not finished. Since we multiplied by 3, we need to what? Divide by 3. Okay? Only the ones that have no variables. And then we reduce. Okay? So this one, the 5/3 or 5/3, it doesn't reduce. So I can take that 3 and bring it to the front. So that gives me 3p minus 5. And then the 3 divided by 3, it does reduce. So I have p plus 1. Okay? And then there's my by two factors. All right. So the first thing we need to do again is we want to slide, right? We want to take the number 3 there and then multiply it to the last term. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to do. So take the number 3, multiply it to the last term. So that's 3 times 8, which gives us 24. So we get x squared minus 10x plus 24. Okay, then the next step is we need to factor. All right, so even though this is factor, we need a factor. Okay, well, actually, the very first thing I should have done was to see if there was a common factor between them. There isn't one, right? But if this was like a 2, then I could have pulled a 2 out. Okay, but it doesn't have one, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, now I got the negative positive combination. So that means both factors have to be negative. So I'm going to have x minus 6 and then x minus 4. Okay, so those are going to be my two factors. Again, warning, some students just stop here and they don't, and they're done. So no, make sure since we have multiplied by 3, we have to divide by 3 and then reduce. So this is 6 divided by 3, which is 2. Okay, and then this one, the negative 4/3 cannot be reduced any further. So I take that 3, bring it to the front. So that gives us 3x minus 4. Okay, so again, if we have the negative positive combination, then both of our factors need to be minus. So that's our answer there. So what we just did here was actually 6.3 as well. So 6.2 was section 6.2 was um, factoring trinomials with the leading term being 1 as a coefficient, right? So this was 1 as the leading coefficient. That was basically 6.2. And then 6.3 is when the coefficient, okay, is bigger than 1, the leading coefficient. So in this case, the 3 now, that's bigger than 1, right? So that's what, so I should have wrote 6.3 there. Okay, so that's what that's about. Okay, all right.